Hey,
There it is. Welcome to another edition of the Jay Rich Show. After much technical difficulties, we are finally here, and I couldn't be more happy to do this show with my guy, the one and only Jackson Flickenger from Right Down Euclid, and Fear the Sword. Jack, what's going on, man? How you doing?
doing good. Thanks for having me on. Glad to talk to you. I mean, I talk to you a lot anyways, but it's great to let other people in on our conversation, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like every time we're at a game for about a year now, almost 2 years, we do podcasts that nobody sees. So we decided maybe record it and let everybody else see it.
Yeah, I mean, they may be for the better, but
Yeah, you
that's
know.
that's not for me to decide, I guess.
All right, so let's jump into it, man. We both cover the Cavs, and so we'll talk about the Cavs. We may throw some NBA stuff, but we'll talk about the Cavs because Jackson has some wild takes on certain players in the NBA.
I don't know what you're talking about. I
Yeah,
don't have any wild
so
takes.
let's we'll start with the Cavs. Jackson, this year, what have you seen um from the Cavs? We've been there pretty much every you've been there every game so far. I've missed a couple here and there, but what have you seen throughout the year? Let's start there. What have you seen throughout the year?
I think this year really solidified how important Donovan Mitchell is and how the trade for Donovan Mitchell, even though they gave up as much as they did, it's ultimately a success because he is firmly at worst, a top 15 player when he's really playing. And there was a little bit of buzz, about how he should be like on the edge of the MVP conversation when the Cavs were on that run in from the middle of December to basically the beginning of February. And I think this also showed that maybe some of the pieces around him haven't taken a step forward in a way that we hoped, specifically Evan Mobley and Darius Garland. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. And I think that it's fair to say that injuries have kind of made this a lost season for both of them in a way that Evan hasn't been on the court very often. And Darius, you know, he came into the he came into the season having put on 12 pounds of weight, being somebody who was doing a good job of finishing inside at the beginning of the season. And then, because of the jaw injury, he lost 12 pounds. And it just seemed like it was sort of a reset. And he hasn't really found his footing since then. I know that he's had some games where he shot well from the 3 point line, but he's still not finishing inside. So I think that's a long way of saying I think this team goes as Donovan does. And we've seen how good this team can be when he's leading it.
Yeah, I think this year showed how much better Donovan is than what the general perception is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it was unfortunate. Like I really like Darius Garland. I think it was unfortunate that Donovan's best stretch came when Darius Garland was off the court. Um, and the stretch that really solidified him as a almost MVP caliber player, like that
Mm-hmm.
stretch that got him, I think, in Tim Bontemps MVP straw poll, like he got
Mm-hmm.
up to eighth, and I think that might be the highest he's ever gotten. Even with those Utah teams that were number one seeds and things like that, a lot of people looked at that and said, "Ah, that's Rudy Gobert. Like he's the MVP of that team. Donovan's just the guy who scores." But here in Cleveland, I mean, he was up to second in steals, you know, as the lead guard with three shooters and a big. That's the game plan.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that it took place while Evan and Darius were off the court because you saw this is how they should be playing. I mean, they beat everybody during
Yeah,
that
and
stretch.
they were beating everybody by a lot. Like they weren't it was it was to the point where I think there were more games decided by 15 points than were decided by less than 10 or something like that. Like it was just like there were so many times they were just running teams off the court, and they did have a little bit of an easier schedule during that time,
Yes,
but they were
yes.
still you don't win like 18 out of 20 games and have it just be like a fluke.
Correct.
Like you don't,
Correct.
because we've seen them since then lose to the Nets.
Right.
We lose to the Rockets really bad. I mean, I know there's other games that they've lost that have been bad. So it's just like winning NBA games is hard, and
They
they were
win a
winning it better than anybody else was during that
they
stretch.
win a 5 game stretch where they trailed for 35 seconds in those 5 games. Like
Yeah.
that's I don't care who you're playing. That's dominant. That's
Mhm.
dominant. Now, in those 5 games, it was like San Antonio, Washington twice, Chicago, I think was in there. It's still dominant. I don't care. Like to beat NBA teams by over 20 points. I think all those games were decided by over 20 points and
Mhm.
only trail for 48 minutes times 5 for 35 seconds is wild.
Yeah, and
Like
I think it kind of just highlights sort of what does the best version of the Cavs look like if Donovan signs an extension and if things go right? What does that look like 5 years down the road or 2 years down the road? Like do we think that he can take that style of play into playing with two bigs? Can he meld that with Darius and one big? Like what does that look like? They need that version of because they need that version of Donovan. And I think we saw that throughout a lot of last year. Like last year he was great, but I think seeing this version with a team that kind of fits a little better is just like a dominant team when you have somebody like Jared Allen, who I know Jared Allen isn't the defender that Rudy Gobert is, but Jared Allen has really become a more well-rounded offensive player, especially with the dribble handoffs. We saw that a ton when he was playing with Donovan, and he was hitting that little 15-footer, which he hasn't really been able to get to that often since Donovan's been out of the lineup. And I think that's to do with not having somebody who provides so much pressure on the rim. Like when Donovan and Jared are in a pick and roll, the defense has to really like make a choice. Either they come up on Donovan or they collapse and just hope to cut off the rim. Whereas when Darius is there, it becomes a lot more congested because as we mentioned earlier, Darius isn't finishing at the rim very well, and it's kind of like that's something he's always struggled with, but it's also kind of exaggerated with him really not being in the shape that he wanted to be in just because he broke his jaw and had to, drink smoothies for a month.
right, a
So,
month and a half. Yeah, like
right.
it sucks because you really there hasn't been a time where this team since the beginning was fully healthy. Like
Hmm.
first of all, the NBA season is something that I've realized this year more than ever. The NBA season is incredibly long. Like it
Yes.
is so long. But like at the beginning of the season, Jared Allen was out
Hmm.
with the ankle. He missed like the first 6 games. Then when
Yeah,
he
he got
come
hurt. Like he didn't even go in preseason. He
right,
was he was hurt like it was like day two of training camp, I think.
exactly. And then Darius got hurt. Um, you know, for the first time, and then he came back. They had a stretch, and they weren't playing well. You know,
They
they
were not
weren't.
playing well.
They were not. I mean, they were losing to the Blazers at home. Like it was bad. It was
We
bad losses.
we thought that JB was gone.
Correct.
Like
Correct.
especially after
And
that Blazers game, we
yeah,
were convinced that he wasn't going to leave the building with his job. And
correct.
then it was like a month later it's like
Wait a
JB
minute. We love
coach of
you.
the
Right.
year.
Right. Like so, but they've never had like in December, you get the news that not one but two of your starters are going to be gone for a stretch of time, and it's like, all right, at that time the Cavs were like hovering around 500 or under
Mhm.
500. Like it was not a good time, and they could have went another way. And then they go on these 18 of 22 or 18 of 20
Yeah.
stretch, and it's like, yo, all right. And then the guys come back, Darius and Evan come back, and it goes it looks kind of bad, not at times.
Nicely, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like it reverts to what it was in the beginning of the season.
Which was
Um,
bad because when
Yes.
they were all healthy, it wasn't good. You know, I know people like to point to, well, the net rating with them all four together last year, and it's like, well,
This isn't
last year they
last year.
didn't. Last year they didn't lose to the Knicks like as dominant as they like the way that they did because teams don't scout a ton for one of 82 games. They don't really change up what they're doing a ton. Even I thought it was funny when I asked JB about how are you going to guard KD with George Niang, and he's like, "Well, we're just
No
not going
one
to
can
change what
guard.
we do."
Yeah, no one can
But
guard KD.
right, but like we're not going to change what we do for
Yeah.
this one game. So, but what teams will do is when they figure out like, oh, this team has like a fatal flaw, we're just gonna keep doing it. Like when Ben Simmons was in the league for 2 or 3 years, people just played defense against him like he was a normal, point guard. But then, well, he after he has a playoff meltdown, it's like no one's
Why are
coming
we
above the
guarding him?
free throw
Why
line,
are we
you
guarding this
know,
guy? Right.
and that's where things change after playoff meltdowns. And I think the Cavs, you really saw that where I remember the first time they played the Knicks, and this was like game 5 or something like that, where they the Knicks, it was like every time Donovan did a ball screen, it was like we're just gonna trap and we're just gonna make somebody else. We're gonna make one of the bigs make a play. We're gonna take away that first pass to a guard. He's gonna have to pass to a big, and then the big's gonna have to do something, but the big's not gonna do anything, and we're just gonna recover and just keep playing basketball. And that's kind of like what teams were doing to them, and the offense was bad and the defense wasn't good enough to make up for a bad offense. So that's where it all becomes really challenging, where it's like we we saw that this team can be dominant when they have one big. We and when we got both of them and both of the guards,
They
it
weren't
wasn't
dominant.
good, but it was only a couple games.
Right. And that's the thing that you don't want to make a rash decision and say, you know what,
Hmm.
get these guys out of here and bring some other guys in because you haven't been able to see. I don't even think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think we've seen 20-25 games with all four of them playing and being able like in a row. Definitely not in a row.
Definitely not in a row, but yeah, it hasn't been a lot. And then like even seeing like Darius and Donovan like post All-Star break, it was like just a couple games, and then it was all right, I'm gonna come back from my knee thing, and then like Donovan's not able to like dribble past me,
Right.
like in those games.
Right.
So you know he's just not the same guy. So which is why he's out again. Obviously, breaking your nose
Yeah, but I
is the
think I
reason
think the
why.
knee.
But
I think
it's
that they're
the knee
not
is a
upset.
serious problem.
Correct. I don't think. I think. Like even if he didn't like, I think that the broken nose like helped them say, hey, let's just rest a little bit, rest that knee a little bit longer.
Yeah, and like Wendy was on the his podcast today and was saying that it's more of an issue than like maybe they're letting on. And it's like, yeah, well, if you watch the game, like those 2 games, he attempted 3 shots in the restricted area, and that's usually like all Donovan does. So
Right.
he's not right. So it's like, and we're seeing that, well, without Donovan, without it, with an imperfect Darius, without Evan, this really is just a mediocre team. And that's kind of what they've shown. Like they'll look good because that's what mediocre teams do. We've seen mediocre teams.
Yeah.
Sometimes they win games against good teams.
Yeah. They'll beat
Eh,
Boston. They'll beat Denver. They'll beat Minnesota.
Right,
They'll beat those teams, and then they'll
but they can
lose to
lose.
the
Yeah,
Nets.
they can lose to the Nets, and you know what? Like the Celtics don't do because
They
they're a
don't
good
lose to the
team.
Nets.
They don't lose to the Nets, and they don't
So
lose to the Bulls. They don't
correct.
lose
Yeah.
multiple times. You
Right.
know, it's like that's where it's like this isn't a good team right now today on March whatever this day
21st,
is, March 22nd.
22nd.
Like they're not a good team now, but you know they're going to fall in the standings, and I don't think it's a reason to like sound the alarms, because it's like without Donovan, this just isn't a good team. And I think it's like okay to accept that.
And also, like, without just this whole year, like it really has been a year filled with like what is going on.
Mhm.
Like I know we're gonna say this and then we're gonna move on, but like the Browns had a year like this, made the playoffs, didn't really do anything. Like that is seems like it's just the Cleveland sports this year. Like it's been tough. It's been tough.
Y- Yeah, and I think kind of I mean, I'm not going to talk about the Browns,
Well,
but
you're a Browns fan, right?
sure. The thing about I think kind of the thing that's kind of weird is that the Cavs played their best basketball shorthanded, where like, which has almost made it more tantalizing because it's like, well, what if they got healthy? What if you added Darius Garland to this team that's winning 18 out of 20 games? And it's like, well, first off, the transition wasn't seamless, and they haven't been on the court together. So it's like that's where it's, you know, and the pieces that fit really well around Donovan, like haven't fit well around Darius just because they're very different players. Like I think of Sam Merrill being a great fit with Donovan Mitchell because Donovan just can collapse the defense so much and Sam can put so much pressure on a defense just by him running around the perimeter that it's just like it seems like at times like, well, how do you stop this? But then you pair that with Darius, who is a very different player where he like passes guys open and really doesn't bend the defense the way Donovan does, so he doesn't create the 3 point looks the same way. It's just kind of like illuminates that these guys have very different skill sets and need very different players around them. So
Yeah. And I also think that part of now I think that part of another issue is yes, Darius Donovan, they have similar skill sets, but different. I know that's a weird
they
way to
have
say it.
they have
Like there
like
are similar,
similar weaknesses, I think, almost, but not similar strengths, if that makes sense.
yes. And I also think Max Strus being out has not helped Darius at all.
No.
Um, and the fact that the Cavs don't have another player like Max Strus, like in theory, I think this stretch without Donovan, if Max Strus was still healthy, think this might look a little different.
Right, especially the games that they almost won because it's not like it's they haven't lost every game by like 25 points.
Right, they're losing
Like
by
they're
3 points, three, four,
right.
5 points.
And one of the things that I've said about Struce a bunch this year is that even though his 3 point shot isn't like falling at great, he's one of the few players on the team that can do all three of pass, dribbling, and shooting, and they just really don't have guys who can do that. Like they just have a lot of guys who can do one of those things, who can they have a bunch of specialists on this team. So when you like specialists are good, but you need to put well-rounded players
Yeah,
around them. And that's why I think like in the play-in last 2 years ago, it was like, wow, Karis LeVert, this guy's the playoff player. And it's like, well, yeah, he's like the only guy besides Darius who can pass, dribble, and shoot on the court.
right.
And then last year in the playoffs, it was like, wow, like Karis LeVert's been good. It's a shame that like nobody else is. And it's like, yeah, Karis LeVert can pass, dribble, and shoot. So it's like this team just lacks guys who can do all of those things at a average to above average level, and Max Strus is one of them. So when you take him out, it's like, yeah, no one's getting to the rim, and it's like, well, like Max Strus isn't like sitting there, just driving to the rim, dunking on people, but he's somebody who can run a pick and roll, and then if the defense collapses in a way, he
He can
can
make
he
the
can
right
get a
decision.
layup.
Yeah, and I'll say this because I was no, I wasn't skeptical, but I was like Max Strus. That's the big signing this year. That initially I thought he's just a shooter. I thought he was just a slightly better version of Sam Merrill. And I know we've now
And he's
had
a
two
worse version, so that's a shame.
we've now had two Sam Merrill mentions on this podcast, but I thought he was just slightly better Sam Merrill, and I've been pleasantly surprised. I've said this all year. I've been pleasantly surprised with how good Max Strus actually is. Like it was a great signing. I think the best signing of for the Cavs this offseason. So, I
Well, I
just
mean,
want to
there's
give.
a lot of competition he has to beat out
I don't
to
want to
win
say I don't
that
want to say too much there,
to
but
win those honors.
all right. So we've talked about what's happened.
Tristan's been great, but why are you saying bad stuff about him?
Well, yeah. I mean, okay.
And
All right.
Morris, wow.
And Damian Jones has given some really good
I
minutes here lately.
and Ty Jerome, he's been great.
Well, yeah. Okay. um, what do you see going forward? Like, how does this? Because let's say they stay in third. Let's just say let's say the Magic have a meltdown. They're fourth. Let's say the Knicks stay in fifth, and it's either it's Philly and Miami fighting for six. Like if the Cavs, this is the problem with having a meltdown now, because if you stay in third, you're probably going to play Miami or Philly, and if you go to four, you're probably going to be looking at the Knicks. So like
Right.
you're going to be in the same situation. You're going, and Philly's going to probably try to get Embiid back. Playoff time, maybe not. We'll see. That's not a team that you want to first. A team that struggled in the past in the Cavs in the first round because the lights were bright. You play in New York, whatever physicality, all of that. The last thing you want to see is Miami, Philly with Embiid if Embiid's back, or New York. So what happens?
Well, one of the things that I'll say is that I think in an ideal world, you have the Cavs in a series that they feel very confident that they can win, and then you kind of just see what they can do in the second round. But if you are skeptical of the fit between all four together, I think you kind of just almost want to see them put to the fire right away and just say like, "Hey man, like if you guys can't beat the Knicks, if you guys can't beat this version of the Heat, and I know that people will, you know, they went to the finals last year. Yeah, that was a different team. Like this team is like this version of the Heat has been a lot more injured than the last one. So I don't know if they have the same. I don't think they have the same ceiling. Obviously, if you asked me last year at this time, I would
Would have
have
said the
said
same thing.
I would have said the same thing. So like I could be wrong, and I'm willing to say that now. But like
Well, we
if
have that. We
you
have we have Max Struess now. They had Max Struess
for
last year.
sure. But if you if it goes the same way it did then there's kind of no like you could talk about not having a lot of time together, but also you had 365 days of knowing what the problems were. So it's like I think if you want things to kind of accelerate into like what the next version of this team is, because I think what this season has shown is that the Cavs can be a great team, but not they're like one evolution away from that, or maybe a couple depending on what happens next. So if you want that to, transition, I think this is kind of like, well, let's see what they can do in another tough first round. And, if they're all healthy and they come together and they beat the Knicks, or they beat the Heat, I think we all say, all right, this is something here that we can keep going with. But if they lose in five again, I think that there's going to be changes. And even like obviously you'd like to keep Donovan, um, but it would kind of accelerate what the next version of this team is going to be. And I think that's
Yeah,
what would happen.
I think you're spot on because I mean, look, you go and lose to the Knicks again, and I think part of the problem, like if they would have the last time they played the Knicks, Brunson gets hurt 15 seconds into the game. Um, no Julius Randle, no OG Ananobi, no Mitchell Robinson, and the Knicks dominated the Cavs in Cleveland.
The only two players who played minutes against them were Isaiah Hartenstein and who was the other guy? It was Isaiah Hartenstein and somebody else. There's only two guys who played minutes at because McBride didn't even play minutes.
Yeah,
Like he
Hart,
just
Josh Hart.
yeah, right, yeah, yeah. Hartenstein and Hart were the only two guys from that series, and it was still it
And
looked
Josh Hart,
exactly the same.
yes,
Exactly the
Josh
same.
Hart had 19 rebounds, and both Evan and Jarrett played in that game.
Right.
Like those are the kind like that game.
And
That was
Dante
when the
DiVincenzo outplayed like he was running circles around Darius and
yes,
Karras.
yes,
Whoever you want to throw in that group, he was running circles around them.
and it just highlighted the fact that oh, we're still not there, and that was tough to watch because at that time the Cavs were they were rolling, like
Right.
they were still rolling. It was after All Star break, but they were still still a hot team, one of the hotter teams in the league,
Right.
and
And
to
we
lose
didn't
that game in that manner was kind of disheartening.
yeah, we didn't know how long Donovan was going to be out, and
Yeah,
we still don't. We didn't think he'd be out this long. Um, but yeah, it was just yeah. I mean, if that were to happen today, I wouldn't be surprised. But
right. But
that's
a series against the Knicks, I understand. You look, you got to quote unquote face your fears and all of that. I get it, but it's also the reason why I really wanted them to, if they could have, like, get some separation with that 2 seed, because then
mhm,
you're going up against a play-in team. Hopefully not the Heat, but you're going up against a play-in team that should be an easier, in the
right,
first round, give you some
and
confidence, and then you go and play your tough battle. You know,
right, and
at
it's like yeah,
this rate is gonna be tough.
and it's like you think that oh yeah, like there's a world where where the Cavs could give the Bucks problems in a 7 game series, and then you can kind of see like I would still think that the Bucks should win, but
Yes,
you kind of get a punch counter punch. Like, can this team come out punch the Bucks? Can they take their punch? Can they counter punch and then kind of like go back and forth and make it a real series, even if they lose? It's not the end of
it's
the
growth.
world,
You see the growth.
right? But if you just because that was kind of the thing against the Knicks, the Cavs didn't punch and they didn't counter punch either. They just kept getting
Correct.
punched. So like like if that happens again, it's like you gotta change something drastic because how even when you go to games this year compared to last year, like there's not the sense of optimism that there was last year because we all saw what happened to the Cavs in the playoffs. So how are you going to sell that again? Like you're not. You're going to have to sell something new. So
Right.
like something will have to change and
Yeah,
not
and
just like
not just coach. Like it'd be
right
personnel and coach, probably personnel and coach.
right. Yeah, you can't just say, "Well, we got a new coach, things are going to be different." So
Right.
that's where it's like there's a lot riding on this, and
Yeah.
the team's not healthy, and the pass is going to be harder. But I said this then. The Cavs are a much better team than the Knicks if they're fully healthy. Like, I firmly believe that. You cannot convince me that the Knicks, with literally one guy who can dribble a basketball, is a better team than the Cavs. So,
Right.
like, and, like,
It's not a talent thing with the Cavs. It's a
right.
physicality and a mental thing with the
And,
Cavs.
and, like, just a lot of bad stuff with, like, over helping, trying to keep Brunson from getting to the rim when Brunson doesn't get to the rim. He
Mid
stops right
range.
after the free throw line and
Right.
just does a little, like the little fadeaway or little push shot kind of. It's like you don't need Jared Allen to step up and leave Mitchell Robinson to come right behind you and get an offensive rebound. So there's like a lot of things that the Cavs needed to improve on, and I think you've seen that in like the you've seen that with some people. Like I think Donovan, one of the things that really highlighted last year was he wasn't a good passer in those situations where teams threw doubles at him. I think he's improved a ton in that area. Jared Allen wasn't comfortable with the ball in his hands, and I think he's improved a ton. I think he's become a better rebounder too. So it's like they have improved, but we haven't seen it all together. So it's an open question, and it's not like I don't think you can postpone the test until next April because who wants to see the same thing three times?
Yeah,
So this was
and
the
I don't.
second chance.
And I mean, obviously, if they go out and let's say it is the Knicks and they lose in the same manner, um, there's going to be all kind of panic buttons pushed. I mean, from end of April until July, we're going to be talking. Oh well, now is Donovan leaving? What's going on with Donovan? What's going on with that? Like that's going to be the question regardless. But like during that stretch, no one talked about that. Everyone said like
Right.
Donovan's here. Like we got him. Let's go.
He's happy. Yeah.
Yeah, like that was everything. And if they lose again, it's going to be 2 months of oh no, he's not coming back. He can't come back. And why? Like it's going to get annoying. Now, I
That
think
and if you don't have Donovan on this team, I think we've seen what this
oof,
team looks like.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
nothing to get super. It's not anything to get super excited about.
And the thing is, the cupboard's not bare. Like, right? They're not like the cupboard's not bare. So
Right.
I don't want to talk about this too long, but like if Donovan does go, there is a foundation there. It's
Right.
gonna definitely look different, but there is something there. It's not like he's leaving and then we're gonna go to the
And you'd
immediately
get
go to the
something back
lottery.
for Donovan.
Right. So there is hope, but you don't want to just let a top 15 player just walk out. Like
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
they haven't. I mean, in their franchise history, they've maybe had one other top 15 player besides 23.
yeah,
So,
you
you
might
know,
want to hold on to him. Just
right?
might
Like you
maybe.
don't really want to like top 15 players. It's tough to get top 15 players. It's tough to get top 15 players if you're the Knicks. When did the last time the
Right,
Knicks had a top 15 player?
right.
You know, let alone if you're the Cavs. So yeah, you gotta do anything you can to hold on to him, but it's ultimately like up to him, and it kind of is up to what happens this spring.
Yeah.
So
I
we
think
will see.
ideally, and maybe this is what they are hoping for. But I think pretty soon here we're going to start seeing teams try to make sure that they're lined up against the Magic because they're the least experienced team, and you know, like the Cavs are the Cavs. They're we know their history, but we also know that if they put it together, they can be dangerous. I'm not
You
saying they
you'd
can be
rather
dangerous.
play the Magic. Everyone
You
would
would,
rather play the Magic.
it's kind of like last year, everybody was trying to play the Kings, Sacramento Kings. Like you just know there's just certain teams that you're like, I'll take them. Um,
Yeah, and a team with the Magic who hasn't been through that before, but also gives you a lot of 2021 Cavs vibes,
yes,
where it's like, yeah, Paolo's great. He was an all star. What are when the game gets tight and it's everyone's walking the ball up the court because nobody can, everyone's too tired to do anything. What is their offense going to look like? Can they actually generate a clean look? Because they've struggled to like generate clean offense at times in the regular season going against regular season teams. How is
right.
that going to translate to the playoffs? And I think you just don't. They don't pass the eye test.
And
So
the outside shooting, they lack the outside shooting,
yeah,
similar to the Cavs last
right,
year. Like they have
yeah,
one or two guys who can dribble, and they not too many guys who can shoot. And even their best player, is not a great shooter. So I'm not saying, listen, I don't want to sit here and say the Cavs will absolutely beat the Magic in a 7-game series, but I think that's the team that if the Cavs can match up with them, if that ends up being the 4-5 matchup or the 3-6, I think the Cavs will
it's
feel
what you would
comfortable there.
you would sign up for that every day of the week
Yeah,
if you were the
yeah.
Cavs.
And then
So
if you lose that one, then yes, I mean,
well, if you lose that one as bad, I don't know. Maybe you just need to tear it down entirely. Just
yeah,
say we'll
go
just
back to the lottery.
yeah we'll just go
let's
back.
let's start the Cooper Flag
Yeah, we'll start
campaign.
tanking for Cooper Flag. Yeah,
All right. So before we go, really quickly, I've been debating whether or not I was going to do this. Jackson has told me uh, he didn't want to, but me and
whatever
Jackson
you
are
want to do, man.
not. Nah, me and Jackson are friends, and friends.
Allegedly.
Okay, so Jackson's my
Yes,
friend. I
yes,
don't know
yes,
if
yes.
I'm
We're friends.
Jackson's
We're
friend, but
friends.
no. um, there was a question asked this week. Well, today's Friday. That was Wednesday, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
Wednesday.
question
Before the
asked
Heat game.
before the Heat game on Wednesday about sports gambling, and Coach JB Bickerstaff and Coach Eric Spoelstra for the Heat gave great answers about sports gambling, and they both told stories about. Coach Bickerstaff told a story about someone actually getting a hold of his phone number and sending threats and things like that. Nothing came of it. No charges were pressed, but they both gave great answers, and I just want to give the credit where it's due. Um, Now, this all stemmed from Tyrese Halliburton saying that he was a prop. He
Mhm.
felt like a prop because of sports betting and things of that nature. That was a great quote, and I'm Jackson. You know who wrote that quote. I'm not. I want to give everybody their credit. Um,
Not off the top of my head, but
okay,
somebody
you
the
cited it in your
Pacers, the
article.
Pacers uh athletic beat reporter.
Yes, and but this week, since Wednesday, there have been a lot of people in the Cleveland media who have written stories and created content off of this question that uh, no one had an inkling to ask. And I just want to say, Jackson, that was a hell of a question, and I want to give you your props and your flowers. And I've not heard what you thought about it. I mean, I have, but we're gonna talk about this for a quick second here. What do you feel, and how did you feel, Coach JB and Spo? They answered the questions. What did you feel about it?
I think it was really um
You're not
telling
crying, are
that
you? Okay.
no, I'm not crying. No, no. I think it's really telling, like, the stories that they shared, just because I think a lot of the times when people talk about gambling, they talk about the consequences that they see, where they see, like, oh, I know that if I was 20 and I was doing this, I would spend all my money recklessly, which is a very big problem and something that we should definitely talk about. And then we also talk about the integrity of the game. Like, could a player have money on the game? Could that mess up the sport and the competitiveness of the sport? But nobody really talked about the safety to the players and coaches. And I think those stories are really illuminating in how, like, this gambling thing can cause people to do crazy things when they have not only a interest in the game but also money in the game, because we know fans do crazy things, but there's just a different level of craziness that people are willing to go to when they have even more skin in the game than just emotional investment that you have because of your favorite team. And that's where things get scary, where players and coaches shouldn't be worried about their safety and their family safety just because what happens in a game. But it's also like you can see how that is much more of a concern now when people have money that they can't afford to lose on something as stupid as how many points both teams will score in a game, where it's not really like the object of the game isn't necessarily to for Jared Allen to go out there and have over 10.5 rebounds, or for both teams to score over 235 points. Like, so that's where it just becomes a lot of, like, conflict of interest, but also people get blamed for something that they didn't really sign up for. Like, I think coaches understand that if you lose big games, there's a responsibility that comes with that, that they haven't accepted. I don't think that these coaches have accepted that their kids or their family are in danger, but they kind of understand that their job is to win games, and that if you lose games, it's going to have consequences. What they didn't sign up for is they didn't sign up for, well, you should leave Jared Allen in the game so he can get his 10th rebound, or, well, the spread is 9.5, you should leave your guys in there so that they can cover the spread. And that's where that's where it's really dangerous and kind of not like it's not good. And it's always like a lot of people drink alcohol. There's not everyone's an alcoholic. So it's not to paint sports gambling and everyone who does it in a bad light because they're just not in moderation.
It's fine.
Right. But it's when like the bad actors are always going to be the ones who take
Mess
it
it
too
up.
far, and
Right.
that's where it's that's where it's a problem, and that's where it can become a problem. And I think you know JB Bickerstaff, who's had the experiences that he has, when he says it's crossed the line, it's like, well, yeah, if people are trying to figure out where you live and are threatening you, yeah, I'd say it crossed the line.
Right.
But Eric Spolstra, who he said, yeah, I haven't had anything like that happen. But I think that, but he said that we didn't, I don't think the NBA really thought this all the way through. And that's where it's like, yeah. And he hasn't had the firsthand experience that JB had, but
Yeah.
he's already come to that conclusion. So that's where it's like, that's where I think you see this as a problem and something that is not going to go away because more states are making it more available and it's not becoming at this point it's not becoming less a part of the game, it's only going to keep
More.
becoming more a part of the game.
I mean, the Cavs have a sports book in Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. You know,
Right.
I mean, there was a time we talked about this Wednesday. There was a time when the NBA specifically would not let you have anything to do with gambling, period, and be an owner or governor in the NBA. And now they have opened up the floodgates where you get the people in Dallas
Mhm.
who bought the Mavericks specifically to build this sports book and casino and put the arena inside. Like, this isn't going away, and it's only going to get worse. Um, and like, everyone in the room was kind of shocked at what JB said, especially when he was
Mhm.
saying, like, these people got my number, and like we're saying, like, I think it was Jared Allen, like, leave the guys in or something of that nature. They lost. They
Right.
lost. Like, the Cavs won the game, but didn't cover the spread, and it's a problem.
Right. Yeah.
That's an issue. That's an issue, and I don't know how the NBA is going to fix this because you can't put this back in the hat now. Like, you've
No,
opened
and
up the floodgates.
well, and the biggest thing is that it's almost not even in their control anymore because they don't even um like even before January 2023 make a you couldn't bet on sports in Ohio even if you were at a physical casino. You
Right.
couldn't bet on sports and now you can do it on your phone
On your
while you're
phone.
sitting watching the game. You
Right. You
can
could
do
be
it on
in
your
the
phone
arena.
while you're not
Right.
watching the game.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not, like the NBA pushed for this, but now it's not really in their control because it's like, you know, NBA games are going to keep happening in Ohio. And in Ohio, sports gambling is legal. And it's not the only state that's like that. But every state that is like that, this is a potential of this happening.
Yeah.
And it's a lot, it's not like sports gambling was just invented last year. You know, sports gambling has been a problem since the Black Sox scandal and like the a long, long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not like this is the first time any. It's not like we're in unprecedented times where sports gambling just started. Like it's been happening forever, but it was what is unprecedented is I can do this on my phone right now, and I don't need to go to a physical casino. I don't need to make contact with somebody offshore. I don't need to jump through
It's not
hoops.
sketchy.
It's
It's not sketchy anymore.
right.
I can
It's
I can literally bet the next play in the
yeah.
arena. Like, I
Right.
can say, "Oh yeah, Darius Garland is going to turn the ball over next time down the court,"
Well, I don't.
and I
I
can
don't want to
put.
give you my thoughts on the likelihood of that happening.
But like, that is dangerous, and I think what JB said, and even to an extent what Spo said, I think both of those illuminated like really how dangerous it is because, like, it's not like the fans are. It's not like hockey where in the arena these guys are walled off and you got to climb a plexiglass.
Mhm.
Like we're I don't want this to happen, but we're not far off from somebody in the front row, like walking onto the court and saying, "Hey, you messed up my parlay." Like this is not. It's not. We've seen crazy things happen, and
Yeah,
that's something that is on the way.
I mean, it's not like, it's not like these people have security teams around them 24/7 and stuff too. Like these are, like a lot of these people live life like everyone lives a life outside of this, but like
Right.
it's not like they're like LeBron who always travels with security because obviously he's one of the most famous people in the world. Like these JB doesn't travel with a presidential security team that's
Correct.
making sure everything's okay. And it's like why he shouldn't have to.
You shouldn't have to. Exactly.
Like his kids should be able to go to school like normal kids.
Right.
And that's where it's all kind of a problem, but it's like there's no solution and the NBA is pushing for this more. So, and this is kind of like this is kind of what they wanted. I mean, they didn't want the JB thing, but they wanted the money. And I think that, like LeBron just has a deal with DraftKings, you know, where it's like there's money to be had there and no one's saying no to it.
Right.
So it's, I don't know. I think the only thing that's going to possibly change stuff is if like a big scandal happened. But it seems like it's obvious,
Yeah. I mean,
that could easily happen.
I think at this point we're at a point now where even if a big scandal does happen, they can't go back. They can't go back and put this cat back in the hat. Like they just can't do it. I'm not trying to rhyme, but they can't do that. Like it's not that's not an option. So how do you regulate it in a way that you know that keeps guys safe? And I don't know that answer.
Yeah,
I don't know the answer.
I don't know if they really care about the answer at the end of the day with how much
Money they're
it's
getting. Yeah.
with how much money is coming in, especially when it's kind of a weird time from a media position just because of, you know, cable. Some people have cable. How do we distribute our games in a way that people who aren't in their 50s and have cable, like how do we distribute our game there and stuff like that. So it's all becoming very, like, the media landscape is changing and we haven't really seen how it's gonna really change, or like what the next TV deal is and stuff. And it's like the gambling money is just kind of like it's a lifeline almost, where the NBA can kind of, keep bringing in money without like really tackling some of these other issues. So yeah, it's
Yeah. But we feel the same about this, and um, but I had to make mention of this. I wrestle with it, you know that, but I had to make mention of it because I felt like no one else made mention that it was your question, and I know they know because you ask better questions than a lot of people. So um,
well,
I
thank
wanted to
you.
make sure that you got your chance to expound on it and talk about it and let everybody know who watches this and listens to this. Let everybody know that no, that was Jackson. That was Jackson. And so these people have Jackson to thank for their content this week.
I'll be I'll be waiting for those thank you notes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. But nah, thank you, Jackson, man. I appreciate you, man. Again, allegedly we're friends, and
Allegedly.
allegedly, and I really appreciate you stopping by and spending some time here. I look forward to seeing you on Monday. I think that's the next time we'll see
Hopefully.
each other.
Hopefully.
Yeah, Monday, and we didn't even get to talk about the charge this
We
time.
didn't talk
So
about the charge, yeah.
you have to come back on. That's what that means.
Okay, yeah, well,
That's that's
I
what that
mean,
means.
you may like the charge more than I do, though.
Well, we can still talk
You
about it.
you Well, at least you talk about how committed you are, but then you never actually go through. Like, I'm gonna go to the showcase in Orlando. Are you going? Like, no, why would I do that? And then like, yeah, I'm not going either.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
because like
I'm going to the last road games. Okay.
it
Yeah,
sounds
I'm not doing
it's
that.
here's the thing. It's like a great idea. It sounds great in my head. Like I'm like, no, that's a
I
great
don't know
good
if it's a great
idea.
idea in your head.
Right. It's not. But
Okay.
I try to make it sound good. But then
Sure.
like I ask you, and when you hit me with the absolutely not, I'm like, well, is it such a great idea? And do I want to travel by myself and go? Like it would be so much better to go with you. But yeah,
Yeah.
once you tell me it's a terrible idea, it's crazy
Terrible
because
idea.
in this situation, like I'm a little bit older than you, just a little bit, and
Just a little bit.
in those situations, it's like Jackson's got a little more sense than Jason. So, you know,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
so but nah, man, I appreciate you. We definitely will have you on again. And yeah, man, thank you so much. You can catch Jackson on you can catch his work on Write Down Euclid and
Hmm.
Fear the Sword. And he is also a co-host on the podcast. What's the name of the podcast again with
The
Tony?
Junkyard Pod.
Junkyard Pod.
Come on, man.
I knew it was.
You've been on the show.
I wanted to say Junkyard Dogs. That's
I
that's that's what I was
I
gonna
do want
say.
to say that I had you on the show before you had me on yours. So yeah, just
This
to
is
say
this is well.
this is
I
true.
don't think I think you asked after I asked you. I asked you to be on this like last year, so you know.
We're just making stuff up now.
Hey, hey, man, I gotta try. I gotta try. All right, but
Trying to
nah,
make stuff
seriously.
up.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you though. I appreciate you. You know, good guy here, good guy right here. So I appreciate you. And until next time, this is the Jay Rich Show. I am Jay Rich, and we'll see you later.